Lovely. Hi there. This evening I'm having like an amazing band. I'm saying amazing because those guys they're around for a lot of time. Like I'll say like from the 90s. They're called Austerity Program. They're from New York. At the moment they are in New York. They're basically here in London. It's about 9:30. It's there about 4:30. They agreed actually to have an interview with me, which I'm really excited and absolutely like stunned with because they're lovely people. We've been planning this for a long time, and I'm really excited. I'm not, I'm gonna lie.
Cool.
Anyway, our story program is basically Justin Foley on guitar and voice, and Ted Calabrese on bass. They don't have a drummer, and we will discover why really soon. So, guys, how you doing?
Doing good, thanks.
Great, thank you.
This is when I'm gonna put my glasses on. So basically, you guys around from the 90s, from 1990, you had a band which actually was Polonium first, which is was believed to be the heaviest metal in the periodic table. In 1997, it went out as an Austerity Program. I can actually see, and this one was one of the news was on the journal that you'll be listening a lot to Bolt Thrower. So
right.
actually, I was checking them out because I don't even know. I mean, I'm 1983, and I believe both they were before me for a long time. What was this about? I mean, like, why do you like that band?
Thad, do you want to start fielding this one?
Well, we sort of got into that band in college a little bit as a goof.
Yeah.
We knew some people in college who, you look at the album covers for Bolt Throwers, and they're these very, detailed. They look medieval album covers of wars and battles, and it's just they're very intense artistically, and we knew people in college who didn't listen to Bolt Thrower, but knew people who listened to Bolt Thrower. So they were kind of like, what are you doing listening to that? But besides the attraction of medieval art like things on covers of records, the guitar was faster than anything I had ever heard pretty much at that point in my life. I thought the vocals were kind of goofy. But it sort of added to the dramatic effect of it all. So we sort of got into it as a goof. I think Justin bought one of the albums and brought it back, and then we started listening to it and sort of sitting there giggling and laughing about it. And then after a listen or two saying, looking at each other and just being kind of like, oh, I kind of like this. It's not so bad. And so that's sort of how I remember listen or getting into Bolt Thrower a little bit, and still the people we knew in college who had sort of experienced this in high school, sort of making fun of us, but us just being like, no, this is interesting, this is good stuff, and never really being sure if I was being serious or not. But to that point, I still every now and then put Bolt Thrower on. So I guess I was serious.
Actually, you're still stuck in the Bolt Thrower era. I mean, like honestly, I was watching a couple of videos of them, and it was like, okay, it's a kind of that metal / the grindcore and really weird sounds. I mean, like for that time, it was like, oh, geez, this is stuff actually is going out now at the moment in Finland and things like that. So I was kind of surprised to see that on your website, because I cannot compare the influences of Bolt Thrower into your music. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I really have to ask this question because that's weird. But anyway, hey ho. I mean, like, it is what it is, isn't it?
I mean, it's funny. I mean, Thad, I think it's funny that like my recollection of what happened is like pretty much aligned, which is not always the case when Thad and I know each other. For as long as we have, that we'll like have very different recollections of something that happened, which that might come out as we're talking here. But I mean, the two things that I thought were interesting, like about that band in particular, were that like my background of like, of the stuff that was sort of formative for me in like high school and that sort of stuff was really sort of the stuff that you align us with more, like Touch and Go Records, Amphetamine Reptile, like that sort of stuff. And you know, almost in some ways as a reaction to like, you know, people who were like stoner metal, or not stoners, but just like, you know, the metal heads, because there was a huge culture of like what metal is and all this sort of stuff. And like to the point that it almost became mainstream in the 80s in the United States. So discovering independent rock, like, and especially like shit that was really hard, was like in terms of an abrasive music, was really like exciting, and feeling like, you know, it was easy to cast off all metal stuff as just being stupid, because so much of the stuff that was being force fed to us in high school and grade school was like cartoonish and bad and dumb. And then like, you know, in college, having someone going like, you know, oh, you know, bolt thrower, like just, it's, the name's hilarious. They're called fucking bolt thrower, right? Like it's so goofy that I remember buying that record, and I remember, yeah, putting it on, and it was the sort of thing of being like, you know, putting on, oh my God, it's so good. Listen to this guy's laugh. Oh, this guitar solo is ridiculous. And then like that, you know, later on being like, do you want to listen to that bolt thrower record again? Like, yeah. So it was finding that like, they're sort of a singularly, like, there's things about that music that I think we'd be happy to take apart if we had all day, about like what I think makes that stuff special, and how it is actually atypical from even like a lot of stuff that was happening on Earache and all that. But I think the second thing that was really interesting about them was like, at some point being like, how do they do that? And like trying to play stuff on guitar, and then like figuring it out and being like, oh my God, like this, it's not like there's a way to actually make these sounds and make music that sounds like this, that sounds fucking badass like that. And like, wow. Like, so those two things were like really, I think, sort of let us down the gate. Let me down the gateway of being like, yeah, man, I like, I remember walking around in like, you know, in college with like a really ridiculous bolt thrower t-shirt, and being like, people looking at me like, you know, showing up at shows with this. I've got like short hair and like, you know, like sort of you know, I look as much of a nerd then as I do now. And like, I didn't fit the part, but I was like, this shit's awesome. And like, at some point, even if like I'm not supposed to like it, like I'm totally there for it. So.
One of the biggest disappointments in our life was when we went to a show that Bolt Thrower was supposed to play at, and we and it was like 13 bands or something like that.
Oh shit!
And we went solely to see Bolt Thrower, and after being there for about 3 bands, we went and talked to one of the guys working at the club, and to our great chagrin, we discovered that Bolt Thrower was not going to be playing because there was, did they have a visa problem or something? There was some reason they couldn't get into the United States.
I think.
And this was in the 90s, well before like getting into the United States. Like the United States, it wasn't exactly screening many people. Let's just put it that way. But we you know, and we couldn't get our money back. And that was by far one of the most disappointing shows we had ever attended.
And like you could have picked us out of the crowd like without even like, it was like, you know, again, these two nerds and like, you know, and like, I don't know, Fugazi shirts or something like that, shorts, and like no tattoos and like, you know, short cropped hair, talking to nobody because we only knew each other there, right? Like, and then like, Bolt Thrower's not playing, and like, what are we gonna do? Come on, man, give us our money back. We're like, get the fuck out
of here. Oh man, I mean, like honestly, I would be pissed as fuck if I have to listen to all this kind of wobble music. I can't see the band actually I came to. Like, what the hell? Like, give me my money back. Like, there's no money back.
I mean, especially like a 13 band death metal bill. It's just like at some point it is just an endurance test. Like so, and it was not good.
Cool. Yeah, this is the story about Bolt Thrower. I discovered something new about the Austerity Program today. It's fun. Mm-hmm. So, guys, you know each other for over almost 3 decades, isn't it? Yeah, are they 3 decades?
Yeah.
1990, 2021. So, in all the relationship you're going in ups and downs, are you still suffering each other? I mean, like, are you still cool with each other? Let's say that.
We just drove around the country together, and we still talk to each other. So I suppose we're still on good terms. You know, I think if we weren't, I think this thing would have already ended a while ago. You know, the thing that I've realized is that playing shows is very little about actually playing the show itself. the show itself is almost like a secondary part of playing shows. It's like driving around with someone, like acting like a goof for a while, and like hanging out with people who you may or may not know that well. But yeah, no, we still get along. We manage to annoy each other, but keep coming back for more.
I don't. If that ever, you don't annoy me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you annoy me.
I know. I mean, I would second. Second that. The other thing I would say is, I like at a certain point, I realized, way later than I should have, that like a lot of my, a lot of sort of what keeps, the band going, is, the fact that like we still can figure out how to communicate with each other in a way that's productive to the end of making music over a long period of time. Right. And that's like not a given, in that like, lots of times the reason why bands break up is because people's lives diverge in terms of like where they can sort of, who can devote how much time to stuff, or people's idea of like, what are we trying to do, or who, how does this fit into like the scheme of like the community that we're a part of, or the music that we want to make, or people's vision for themselves of like, and lots of those things pull people apart. And it's totally natural. And that's just sort of, never happened to us. And I think that that's unusual and fortunate. And then the other thing is like, as Thad just said, like, this is kind of what the fun thing that we do together, right? That we, like, I don't want to like drive I really do think there is something fundamentally different about like this versus the annual fishing trip that we go on, right? Like, are the guys who like get on their motorcycles and they go do their guy thing, or or maybe people, something less macho than that, like guys who or women who get together, or whomever gets together and like has a thing that they do with their friend that's kind of about that, that they like. I think that I like that stuff. I think that there's similarities to it, but being in a band and creating something, I think there's something fundamentally different about that. Nevertheless, like the friendship that we've got is really sort of like is part of what the band is. I think my conception of being in the band is sort of being about. So yeah. And
Justin, more apart from hanging from the rooftop, which one is your routine during the live shows, or I mean, like in general, when you go in for a live, which one is your routine, guys? Which one is your daily routine?
I mean, I honestly say, like, I approach performing live as the opportunity to clear away a bunch of obstacles to be able to sort of do whatever needs to happen to really sort of be in the moment of it, right? And like, so the big obstacle is, can I play these songs, right? So that's the real reason why I practice, is so that I'm not in the middle of finding myself in front of people, unable to sort of do the core thing that we're there to do, which is present this music to people, right? So assuming that I can get past that, I could also just like invite all these people over to my house and hit play on a record and point to it and be like, isn't this cool? This is our band, right? But like it's, so clearing that away, and just like the other big thing is, of course, all the technical shit, right? Like, as Thad and I have had plenty of technical like failures performing along the way, and so a lot of it is just sort of making sure that the gear that we have in the context of the clubs that we will be playing is able to function well. So once those two things are out of the way, I'm really just sort of interested in sort of being in the moment. So I don't really like. There's nothing that I sort of like have in my back pocket canned as a performance like idea. Like, tonight we're going to go up and I'm going to do my, Thad night checking in. Are you going to do the spin around, like, like the James Brown spin arounds or anything like that or whatever? Like, that type of performance is fantastic when people execute it well. I've got no interest in sort of doing that myself. So when I like find myself in a place, I'm like, there's a part in a song and I can climb up on something, I feel compelled to do that. And I'm not going, and like, doesn't look like shit's going to fall apart, I'll just go do it, right? Like, I mean, that's the whole point of like performing, is to sort of really throw yourself into the moment of it.
True stuff. Tad, do you want to add anything about that? Any routine that you guys do during the live, before the shows, or the way you hang around?
We both have things happen to us before we play that happen before every show. I mean, Justin gets very hyper before playing a show. I get the opposite. I like start to pass out and fall asleep. I have fallen asleep in bars that are very loud before playing.
10 minutes before it's supposed to go on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's sort of a funny tension in the band because Justin, although to our credit, we now know how to deal with it much better than we did in the past, where in the past I would be passing out and Justin is like, come on, let's go for a walk, let's go, and I'm falling asleep. Usually when I get up on stage it's fine, usually, but it's sort of a funny sort of polar opposite reactions to be in a show, and I can't remember who told me. And I think it might have. I can't remember if it was you or someone else who told me, like, at my wedding. It might have been you. It might have been someone else. Well, let's say it was Justin because he was in my wedding. Someone told me, to like sort of stop and look around and like remember things while it's going on, because otherwise you just sort of get swept away in things. And so for some reason I have applied that to playing shows. And so I have weird sort of snippet memories of being in weird places, in the United States or in Europe, and being like, oh, make sure you remember this exact for no reason other than, whatever someone told me once before my wedding about remembering it. And so I'll barely remember playing a show somewhere, but like I'll have some weird like snippet stuck in my brain about it, because like I'm always consciously up on stage like, remember to look around and enjoy yourself for 5 seconds.
Yeah, so you won't remember, like, I'm trying to, some unusually large show that we played in some other country that's like, did we play that place? How many people were there? All that, but you will remember the dick that somebody drew on the monitor, like in a Sharpie, right? Like, that you'll never forget.
Right. Like when we played a show in Quebec, and like I remember sort of feeling like, oh, there weren't as many people there as I thought would be there based off of the prior night. But like I have distinct memories of being up on stage and sort of playing parts of the show, because I was like, remember to look around and to remember to be in the moment.
It sounds like actually having a little mom on your shoulder telling you basically like to do certain things when you're actually playing live.
Well, yeah, and she makes sure that when we're out there on the road that we eat vegetables and that we treat our bodies well and treat each other well. So yeah, that sounds right.
Wearing your clean pants as well, all these things that moms they do sometimes. Like my mom used to tell me that like just wear clean pants in case you're gonna go to the hospital. Fuck. Anyhow, right, I'm gonna read you something that actually was on your website. There was the latest update on your journal, and it's from the 22nd of June 2021. Mm-hmm. Last night was our first practice since January 2020. We were okay, shaking the rust off. At one point, it both messed up in the same way. Both ended apart 4 measures too soon. Now we have to have. If you have a live drummer, we would have insisted they made the mistake. I think like he made the mistake. Or
right.
Yeah. Come on, how could we both have made the same mistake? Well, we did. So now I have to protect the category myself, because actually I'm a drummer. Why our Austerity Program doesn't have a drummer? Like, I mean, what's wrong with you guys?
I will say that is quite an intro to that. Why? So
we'll say the question went this way, and I thought it was going this way.
So why don't we have a drummer? I mean, I think, there's a kind of a smart ass way to answer this, which is like, which is there's no expectation. There shouldn't be a default expectation for anything. And so us not having a drum, why don't we have a tuba player? I mean, like, I would say, the reality though is, of course, like the environment we operate in, like, lots of the similar folks who are sort of in the same way we are, at some point they usually, find someone to play drums with them, and then they go off and they play drums and they have a band with that. I would say, what started as a sort of where we began in terms of when we felt compelled to make music with each other was like, we wanted to, this is something we want to do, and we don't need somebody right now. Like, if you are interested in playing bass and I want to play guitar, we don't need somebody right now who can, to fill out what we want to do. You can buy a drum machine, you can create music, and then we can just start making music. That's what we're compelled to do right now. Hear song, create songs, be a part of playing together, all that sort of stuff. Like, that's what's driving us now. So why wait to find something that's not immediately at hand if all the other pieces are potentially there? Let's just go. But I think, there was both influential stuff and just sort of like ideas of like what this whole thing should sound like in our head, that very quickly sort of got to the point of like, it moved beyond there's no one around to play drums, but let's go ahead anyway, into this is a fine way for us to sort of like be able to, develop an aesthetic, I guess you could sort of say, or develop an identity, or sort of create. These are the tools that we're going to sort of use to create the music that we want to create. And I feel like we're like, it satisfies the creative itch enough in a way that I don't feel compelled to sort of like round it out with something else that's not there. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot more I could say on it, but I'll stop there. I don't know, Thad, what do you thoughts on it?
I don't have much to add beyond that.
To be fair though, I mean, like, when I was listening to the records back then, I didn't feel personally that you guys need a drummer, because the drum machine is so complex, is so well done that literally that doesn't need another person if you're having those kind of ideas, which are coming from the inside.
Right.
I mean, my question was just because in a noise band, noise rock, or whatever you want to call it, what you guys doing, experimental, it's really easy to get another idea from one person. Actually is is actually there as a drummer, and instead of having you the double job to do which basically you play guitar and voice, he does the bass, and after we need to mix everything together and make sure actually the drum machine works as well in the way we wanted to do. But I believe, it's a kind of from my point of view, in the beginning when I was listening to the records, I didn't even realize it was drum machine. And after I went into the investigation themselves, I'm like, okay, well, it's drum machine, it's weird, but it's cool. The question was even more for the complexity as well, because I mean, like, your drum machines are not like a 1-4-1-4 or 3-4-3-4. They're basically like complex. Yeah. So having a new one maybe can remember you sometimes that you have to go in the parts. But I mean, I completely understand that if this is your choice, I mean, like, it works perfectly for me. I mean, like, seem to do it on stage with a drum machine, smashing the way you do. I mean, it's fair enough. For me, it's like, wow, even better, because that means there's something mathematical behind. There's a lot of effort being put in. But it was just a question because, in this kind of genre, I mean, like, it's really unusual to have a drum machine and two players. So that's why I was asking that. And yeah, cool.
Yeah, the two small pieces I would add on are one, like, I will say that there's an obvious disadvantage to playing live music with a drum machine, and that having a really engaged and good drummer is just part of an exciting performance. Like, it really can be. Like, people are like, man, they're like, I think some of my favorite live bands that I've seen, and part of just watching somebody go to town on a drum kit, or just taste, just who knows what they're doing and is a part of the performance, is exciting, right? And like, when people are like, oh, you're going to get up on stage with some piped in music, like, there's obviously a factor of like excitement that like gets knocked down, that I feel like, we feel compelled to sort of like, put back into it in terms of the way that we present ourselves. But so that's one thing, like, and I don't think that's, that's a fair criticism of how to put on live music, is doing it without a drummer and a drum machine is you're starting off more boring than somebody who's got a good drummer. The other thing I would say though is that, like, I am really not, I have a hard time with a lot of bands that are interested, that don't sort of set parameters for what they're doing. That's like where there's no like definitions for sort of what makes that band that band. So like you think of a band like U2, who's like, they could put out a reggae record. They could have I don't know. They could have Lady Gaga come in and sing on half their tracks, right? They could do, and it's all a U2 record. And Adam Clayton is now taking, he learned double bass, and they're gonna like get the sound of a jet plane going. Like there's nothing that they would say no to, that you're sort of like, what makes this a U2 record, right? As opposed to like saying like, look, we're gonna have some very clear instrumentation that we're gonna sort of settle on. And we're gonna sort of like, there's a general aesthetic we're gonna sort of settle on, and we're gonna really, really dig into that and see where it takes us. I think that's like just giving yourselves a limited set of tools and a limited set of options, rather than feeling like, oh, we're going to get a synthesizer and can make any sound that we want for any record. And like I just, at some point that doesn't excite me. But when I hear a band that's like, man, they're still going at it and still digging deeper, like, and it doesn't get stale. That's sort of like what I'm sort of compelled to do in terms of like being in a band and writing stuff, is to really go hard on like the stuff we've been doing, but deeper and deeper and deeper. So for that reason, the idea of like, well, you know what, maybe we should get a drummer and a female singer, and I'm going to start playing, I don't know, with a chorus pedal is like all over everything, and we're going to overdub with acoustic guitar, but it's still going to be an Austerity Program record. Like, it's all just sort of sets of changes that when it comes time to sort of like engage back with the band, I don't feel compelled to sort of press those buttons.
Understand. Yeah. I mean, completely understandable, and I completely agree with you as well. So how the composition with the drum machine is happening? Like, you guys producing the riff first, and after you overdub with the drum machine, or you do the drum machine first, and after you do the riff on top? How does it work?
It depends upon, I mean, it's changed over time. I mean, I think the last record was the first record where the lyrics, like there was one song that the lyrics like were written out first, and then like the rest of the song was built around it. Sometimes it's fucking around with a drum machine, and sometimes it's playing around with a riff of an idea. So it's never always one thing. Yeah.
Cool. But it's embarrassing silence now. Sorry. I'll fill the gap. Right. I'm just going to talk about, I just give you a sneak peek before, when actually we were on the backstage, how I discovered you guys. So it was a weird phase in my life. I was reading this graphic novel, which is called Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus, which is from a graphic novelist, which is called Chester Brown. And it talks about a prostitution and women's into the Bible. Went through Off Minor and Locust and other bands. At some point, it came out Bible songs. At some point, I was thinking about maybe God's trying to tell me something. That was weird. It was really weird. And talking about Bible Song Volume 1, great records. It actually, I believe, like the first LP that you guys doing with songs which they are named as a song, because before it was like song 30 to 31, same things like that. The title themselves, they represent something because they are step of the Bibles themselves. So we need to collate the step of the Bible to understand the lyrics, or they are just titles themselves, just put in there with the lyrics which they are really powerful and absolutely intelligent from my point of view. How does it work?
The stories that are referenced in the titles, the passages that are referenced in the titles, correlate exactly to what the lyrics are in those songs. So but it's not like, we're obviously not presenting those like the actual biblical text. But you can take those sections and you can go back and compare them against the lyrics that sort of match them, and it's talking about the same thing. Yeah, I'm hesitant to. I think that it's the exercise itself is interesting enough from a listener's perspective to go investigate that like I don't want to go too much deeper into it. Like, I'm not, in terms of like Justin's or Thad's biblical criticism or thoughts on religion or anything like that. That's, if I was good at that stuff, I would not be in a band singing songs. But I think that the clue, I guess, to say is, yes, you can take those passages and go back and look at the lyrics, and you can play one-to-one there.
Yeah, but you said those songs, there are 6 songs recorded of all your favorite Bible story, all of the wrath of God, none of the salvation, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a bit of criticism behind, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but like I mean, the intention, I don't think it's particularly interesting to create a record that's like, that says like, I don't like religion. Like, okay, cool. You don't like religion, right? Like, or on the same path, like, I'm so compelled by my religious sort of yearnings that I just want to go and sing songs about like just how much I love, you know, I like things like let me tell everybody let me put a record out about my opinion about like God and religion. Like, who fucking cares? I mean, or maybe somebody's good at that and it's just not what I would sort of be compelled to do. So I think I don't think that the record is intended and the music's intended to sort of like corral someone into a particular point of view, right? Like, it's like, this is an interpretation and the music is an interpretation, and like it fits together as sort of like a way to sort of to visit these stories and passages. And I think you could really be strongly religious, and I don't think that the record necessarily turns you away because you're like, oh, this is obviously, you know, an anti-religious record or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, you know, there's something when you're listening to, you know, someone who's, you know, all in one way or the other, you know, whether it's
Jello Biafra.
Yeah, Jello Biafra versus Striper or whatever that awful Christian rock band was. To some extent, you've sort of self-selected who your audience is going to be at that point. And you know, frankly, you know, when, you know, Justin was telling me about this idea he had for an album, you know, based off of Bible songs, I thought it was, you know, weird but interesting. And you know, it's also interesting because, you know, depending on when you catch me in my life, I'm going to have different opinions on, you know, religion. So, you know, to the extent that you can sort of say like, oh, here's you know, Bible verses as a treatment, you know, sort of as a, you know, it's an important book. Historically, it's something that is interesting to sort of build off of and use it musically. You know, I think it has more longevity than and potentially more inclusivity. So you're not excluding whole groups of people who are just like, oh well, you know, that we know the Austerity Program. They're just, you know, we know what their opinions on religion are, or not. But I think, you know, I just think it, you know, just sort of lets the listener, you know, sort of be like, oh, you know, so that was sort of an interesting take on that story, or that was a different take on that story. And, you know, I think that's what creative things are supposed to do, rather than just, you know, and anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Do you guys remember still when when Hydra Record was signing you? I believe it was, so I just have to go through my notes. 2021? No, sorry, not 2021. I'm lying. Do you remember when it was, like when Hydra Records signed you guys? Was
it's
weird.
2002 or
2002. Do you remember that day? I mean, what happened? They just give a phone call, say, hey guys, you really wanna produce one of your album or things like that?
Oh, I had when we had sort of finished the first demo that we'd done, I went through my record collection and sort of like started and was just sending records or letters off to record labels that like I was like, either that I had that was like, oh, here's a record I've got, I like it, this, I'll go send some of this label, or like places that I sort of knew. So I like, you know, licked the stamp and put the demo in the mail for Hydra Head Records. I didn't know who the hell they were. I did that probably with 15 or 20 other labels, and then like I had the 5 labels, and I'm like, oh man, I hope these guys who I actually know and have, you know, were formative for me and who I like, and oh my God, bro, like, maybe they'll call me back. It'll be so great. So like, I remember when we got the email back from Aaron Turner, who ran Hydra Head Records, he was like, look, everything's crazy right now. We can't say yes to anybody for anything, but I I can't let your demo go on not acknowledged. I really liked it, and we should just sort of see what happens down the line. And I remember being like, and then after a while, it sort of got into like, you know what, maybe we'll put a song of yours on a compilation we're going to do. And then after we sort of got to know them, and then it was clear that they were like, look, you guys are our kind of people. Like, we should sort of figure out how to make things come together. But I just remember I reached out to a friend of mine who ran a record store, and I'm like, yeah, these guys in Boston run this record label called Hydra Head, and they said that they would probably put something out of ours. Do you know anything about these guys? And he was like, I think it's only funny because this is not the type, he's not macho at all or something. He said, I just want you to know there are probably 5,000 bands that would give their left nut to have had that letter from you. You don't even know like who this label is, because and it was an extremely fortunate like pairing for us, because it was it was they were at that point where it's sort of a cool label. They had an incredible roster of bands on them. People were paying a lot of attention to them. That's all great, but their vision for sort of what they wanted to do as a label, their vision for how to treat bands and give people artistic creativity, their vision for business practices, they were not, and they would be the first to tell you, they were not particularly good at sort of running a tight business ship. But their thought was always like, we're going to split profits 50-50 with the bands, right? If you don't want to sign a contract, we're not going to make you guys sign a contract. Like, it was, there were problems with the way that like some of the operation stuff came along, but that stuff was all totally secondary to finding people who were like, you guys are willing to take whatever bet on us we want to take. And like, wow, and at the time I was just like, oh, I guess that's how things happen. And meanwhile, like I talked to other people in bands and they're like, oh my God, like this label's like trying to get us to do a Mountain Dew commercial, or how they want to know how come we're not touring, 9 months a year, or the guy who runs is a total misogynistic asshole, or they're all on drugs. Like, Hydra was a little bit on drugs, but other than that, none of those problems were like things that we were coming across. So it was I remember that, and then we've continued to just like continue to be very good friends with Aaron Turner, and a number of those relationships have just become important personal lifelong relationships for me. So it's been super fortunate in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Guys, how was to go back on stage after a long time not playing and things like that? Was it cool? Was it different? Was it weird? How was it? Was social distancing on stage as well? Things like that?
We've been social distancing on stage before it was cool, because there's usually only 2 of us on the stage. No, it was. I think we may have had different experiences. So from my experience, there was some, we had discussions about whether this was the right thing to do and all of that. Once we sort of got over that issue, then it became something to look forward to. At least I was looking forward to it. Playing shows and getting out of town to play. Let me start over. Playing a series of shows in different places where you have to travel is a much different thing than just playing a show where you go for a night and then you go back home the next day. It's a much different experience to hop in the car, drive to a different state, play a show, not really sure where you're going to sleep, drive to the next show the next day, that sort of thing. I gotta say it was a little nerve-wracking initially, but for me it was great to do it. And I'm sort of naturally inclined to not do things. Like, I'd be happy sort of staying at home, COVID didn't affect my lifestyle much, except I was the choice to do that was removed. But that being said, I really felt A, it was a great time. B, it was great to sort of connect with other human beings again. C, it was weird that in many places people were masked. But I got over that. That was actually one of the things I was concerned about. I was like, it's not going to be fun. You're going to be out, looking out and seeing people wearing masks, and who wants that? But it was okay. It was fine. I didn't really have an issue with it. And like I said, it was great to, it was great to be, it was, part of the fun, as I said before, is just sort of driving around and, we sort of bullshit our way across America and, have fun conversations. We have real conversations, it's, sometimes, sometimes I'm falling asleep randomly in the not in the driver's seat, in the passenger seat. It was all of that, and it was great to be back, and it was great that some people were starting to go out and do some things. So
yeah, sounds cool. I mean, like, yeah, just checked out a couple of bands when everything reopened. It was a bit sad though, because it's not the same thing as before. There is no pogo, there is no interaction in between humans. Everyone is distance, you use hand sanitizer everywhere. But it's good actually to get a bit of the old, the old shows back. I mean, like, I guess hopefully at some point it's going to be fine. Regarding COVID and pandemic, I mean, like, it's a kind of a really, I was going to say, the mainstream question. How was your pandemic? I mean, I understood actually that during the lockdown you were fine because actually it was your lifestyle pretty much. But I mean, like, there was a choice. I mean, a choice. Justin, how was for you? I mean, like, did you freak out or you were cool?
I'm they're like going through an experience like over the past, whatever, 16, 18 months. Like, it's the overwhelming thought that I had is it just makes me realize that they're just fortunate in ways that lots of people sort of are not. And, any complaints, I think it's even to the point where, like, it's my wife will find that she's frustrated about it because she'll be like, I can't talk to you about, like, being stressed out, or I can't talk to you about anything being hard because, like, I'm always just like, shit, man, people have it so much worse than I do, right? Like, getting sick, losing family members, being asked to, put themselves in unsafe situations, all that shit. Like, I had very, very little of that stuff bumping into me. So, so that's and that sort of continues apace. I am not. I've met very little hardship relative to lots and lots of people, and just grateful for it. So
cool.
On the other hand, it wasn't all like roses for Thad. You guys had a couple bumps along the way.
Yeah.
What? Well, yeah. I mean, we got sick, but that's. Yeah.
You got COVID. I did.
So I will tell you a funny story.
Go for it. I mean, like, I'm here to hear the funny stories. Hold on a sec. Let me organize myself.
So when COVID started, it was basically hitting in Wuhan, China, and in Italy, and because I'm sort of a pessimist, or have I'm sort of dark by nature, as all these people were like being infected and dying in Italy, one of my first thoughts was, holy shit, I hope there's not something that makes Italians genetically predisposed to like bad outcomes from COVID. Because those are the two regions getting hit. And then
I'm laughing out of it. It's really a dark humor, but yeah, I mean, like, I shot my pants as well. I'm not gonna lie.
But then, yeah, having I got it and gave it to everyone in my family. But the sort of the upside to it is that it was so early. In some respects, that was terrible because I didn't know what was going to happen. But on the flip side, when we finally talked to our doctor about it, it was like, okay, this was like in March last year. And so basically she was like, you have to start your quarantine now. You have to assume, blah, blah, blah. So we have, 3 kids and a dog. And so basically she was like, you can't really go and do anything. And it was something absurd originally. Do you remember how long they said not to do anything originally? It was like 3 or 4 weeks or something.
8.5 months, I think it was. They said come out of Christmas, I think.
Yeah, it was like come out of Christmas. But I remember being at home in like March, and then like April, we were sort of still at home, And when May rolled, like I remember going outside at like early May, going like, this is the first time, except for walking the dog, that I have been away from my house in like 6 weeks or something ridiculous like that. Now, the upside to it all is that nothing really nothing happened to us. Everyone was, to Justin's point, I didn't lose my job. I didn't lose my health insurance. The kids were not really sick. My wife wasn't too sick. And then because we had it, I never really worried about getting it again. So I was able to, go to the grocery store and, do stuff. And so some of the concerns that some people sort of developed, some of the anxiety around just sort of going out, I was able to avoid because whether it's true or not, I just assumed at that point that I was like, well, I had it, there's nothing I can do. That being said, I still went out and got vaccinated in April of this year. So to all you listeners out there, I highly recommend it.
Get a bloody vaccine and just get it over it.
Yeah.
Now, mine actually was fine as well. I'm having a kind of a sad / funny story too. So starting to work back in the park. Sorry, I'm just gonna steal 5 minutes of your time to tell you this. So I'm working for a company. It's actually I'm working in food industry. I'm an operational support manager for food industry. So at the moment, our industry is pretty much fucked up. So they're sending us over pretty much everywhere to support. Starting to work in Royal Park in Regent's Park. So and I caught COVID there, but I didn't know it was COVID. Just because a couple of days before it was pissing rain, badly. And here in England, when it pisses rain, sometimes means it's gonna be there for hours, maybe days.
Right.
Anyhow, I have to go back home because I was hanging around the unit. It's like, okay, I have to go back home. It's been raining for 2 hours straight. I'm gonna just try to get an Uber. And after I was trying to get a Bolt, and after I was going to get any kind of a cab coming and pick me up, even a black cab, nobody was coming in because it's inside the park. And nah, don't go there. I just walking through the rain. So when we were actually close to good wells in about a couple of days because we were zip lining, doing hiking. I do climbing myself sometimes, indoor and outdoor. A couple of days before I started to feel ill, I was thinking actually it was a cold. This cold is really strong, so about 38 degrees Celsius overnight and things like that. I get tested, actually I got COVID. So I'm not going to Wales anymore for about 10 days. That was my only holiday after ages. I'm stuck at home for about 10 days. And sad story is this one. I forgot completely I'm having COVID and all the side effects. I'm losing smell and taste in about 5 days. I'm ordering shitloads of groceries to my door. I'm starting to cook. And I'm doing aubergine pasta with tomato, beautifully made. Because I'm kind of a good chef as well. I'm going to taste this kind of cardboard boxes. I'm looking at myself, what the fuck am I cooking for? I can't even taste. Why I'm doing this? Just the habit actually of doing something sometimes. So yeah, fair enough. It was not that bad. I was a sore throat, blocked nose, sinus, and tiny bit of losing smell and taste. But yeah, it was not bad. But still, people get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And
full recovery for you? You came back, everything's...
There was just a week after that I felt a bit under the weather and short breath. What I did, I just took X-ray and blood test, and it told me it's normal, just it's okay. Now I'm fully recovered. I'm pretty fine. My second vaccine was pretty interesting as well. I had 3 days straight on the 40 Celsius fever. That was really good indeed. Yeah. That was a really good 3 days in bed. But anyway, yeah, over and done.
I never had a fever. No one in our house had a fever. And so whenever I go somewhere and they take my temperature, I'm always like, that wouldn't have worked when I was sick. So anyway, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. It's all good.
Justin, you got vaccinated, I think.
Yeah, I did. I'm same thing. First day I was over there, had my shoulder up, get it. My kids have all gotten it. We're all good to go.
Sweet.
We're gonna see. So Justin has the Moderna, and I have the Pfizer. So we're gonna see who lives longer, and then we're gonna attribute the causation to the vaccine.
Yeah. It's more about who's gonna get the third nipple first. I got Moderna, so Justin, I'm gonna keep you updated. Actually, my third nipple.
You guys got it made. I keep hearing that's the one that seems to be lasting. I thought I had the Rolls Royce of vaccines originally, but apparently it's the Moderna. So
sorry, my friend, we got like the really good stuff. I got the really good stuff. And I just went to the vaccination center. You're gonna get Moderna, my friend. I like, oh, thanks God. I didn't want to thanks. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave off with the last question because I'm really spending a lot of your time. It would be lovely actually to hang out with me for almost 1 hour. And I know you are busy at work and things like that. Are you familiar with Chancellor Rishi Sunak? Is the Brit guy which was giving money for free for about 1.5 years to the Brits. Anyway, this guy is a Tory. It was the guy behind the furlough scheme. The furlough scheme was basically like 80% of your salary until actually the businesses that will start to reopen after we went in flexi furlough, which was about getting paid for amount of hours, and it was a top up actually they were doing. It was a good thing actually to don't make the economy completely collapse. Rishi Sunak at some point was pushing people, and it was like. During the pandemic, like the third month, actually we were really bad here in England, was pushing people to get new skills, because new skills are important, because it's not pretty sure that you're gonna be back doing your jobs, and this one was actually really scaring people. And actually, everyone was starting to do something. You guys got any new skills during pandemic or in lockdown? Could be everything.
Yeah, let me see. New things that I learned how to do. I feel like I learned how to make an omelet.
Seriously, man. Okay.
Which I'm gonna say.
No judge.
But that was like a mystery food for me for like 40 years. I'm like, like, how do you not burn it? So that was good. I mean, like. Cooked some stuff, grew some stuff outside my house. I complained to Thad about this. I really screwed up and was starting to read a book, a philosophy book by Martin Heidegger. Like I picked it up like in February of 2020, and I was committed to myself. I am going to read this thing. And so I didn't read anything else for a year other than that. And the book is impossible to get through. So I really wasted a lot of sort of kind of downtime where I could have really been reading lots of different stuff, just sort of slogging my way through Heidegger. Those were probably the main things that I learned how to do, that I really invested my time in. I don't know. How about you, Thad? Any new skills?
As we discussed during our drives at the beginning of the month, well, like Justin, I also started doing some gardening, which I always wanted to do, but never really felt like I had the time. So nothing very exquisite or anything, but lots of peppers and herbs and stuff like that. So that's been one thing. Really, the two big changes I made in my life, and I told Justin this while we were driving. One is I no longer make drip coffee in the morning. I now make French press coffee every morning, because I started doing that because I didn't do it in the past because I didn't have time, and I had a lot of time, and now I just really like French press coffee, so I make it every damn morning. Even if I'm sort of need to be somewhere, I'll stand there and wait for it to steep, and then push the plunger down. But I'm waiting for my coffee. The other was that I've sort of made making sure I get physical activity every day much more of a priority than I did pre-pandemic, because I realized I was not as healthy as I thought I was before getting sick. And if there's one thing this pandemic, I think, reveals, is that the healthier you are, the more likely you are to have better outcomes. And so I I shouldn't say that. I hope no one at my job hears this, but I will even prioritize physical activity over work at this point. So I wouldn't call it a new skill, although learning how to be physically active does require some learning of skills. I'm very lucky that my wife was always very physically fit, and so she was very helpful, as I basically said. And it didn't happen right away. It happened this, 2020. I was like, I need to get in better shape. And so she was sort of like, all right, I'm going to help you figure this out. And so that was sort of a skill, but I think it was a good one, and one that I think will knock on wood. I've kept it up for most of the year so far. So.
Yeah, so I would say, like, this is the boring thing about talking to people who are like have been around doing stuff for a while. Like, there's no musical projects of like, oh, I'm going to learn how to like record our own band. Like, we did that. We're going to learn how to, there's just all this stuff that we already had to figure out to get to this point, right? Like, didn't buy any new cool music gear, didn't like all that shit. Just did, like, we don't have to worry about that because like, we already know how to do it. When am I going to go buy another guitar? This one's fine, right? Like, I know a number of musician friends of mine who have like finally embarked on that big project that they were doing, or finally like we already are on this path doing what we're doing. There's been nothing drastic about it. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, you're also unfortunately talking to two people who have kids. So I not to speak for Justin, but a tremendous amount of the past year and a half has been spent like, how do I make sure that they don't lose 2 years of education? How do I make sure that they don't think that like the world is ending and everything in the world is awful and terrible?
Yeah, it's true stuff. There was a lot of psychological support through the kids as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and they certainly give support to us, but you're the adult, so you definitely have to be the one.
Yeah.
To
be there, like to be the stability into the family as well. Regarding coffee, Tad, I was thinking for your origins, you like espresso coming from a mocha. Just to say, that is actually, from Italian origins.
I'm not opposed to a good espresso. I just don't make it myself.
I see. I'm disappointed about the French press because but it's fair enough.
Yeah, like that was the only like feedback I've gotten from you over the whole call, where you were sort of like rolling your eyes, being like, the next
I was like, what the no. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I got really British on coffee, so I do like my latte with oat milk because I'm vegetarian. I'm kind of boring on milks and things like that. So so yeah, I do like my latte with oat milk. So when it's triggering me sometimes hearing someone with Italian origins not having a nice espresso, having a French press. But it's fair enough. I understand that. So last question, and after I let you go. Next album, when is coming, and what we expecting from the next album for Austerity Program?
We can be pretty straightforward about it. Since it's just the two of us, we are sort of part of a collective that runs its own record label. No one is knocking down our door to say we need something from you by date X. So although there's some of this that has to happen sort of like fitting into life, the other thing is we just have to set our own deadlines. So I had called the pressing plant where we did our last record, and I said, if we wanted to have a record out by October, we wanted to have records on my front step by October 1st, 2022, when do you need a recording from us? He gave me a date. I called up the mastering engineer, and I said, if you're going to deliver a recording to the pressing plant by this date, when do you need to have a master tape from us? He gave me a date. That's the date when we need to sort of have a record sort of figured out. So it's, the Bible Songs 1 was a 6-song EP. It was obviously, it says it's volume 1 of 2. The next one is going to sort of will probably be another 6-song EP that will be 2 of 2. And there's there are nascent ideas for those songs that are sort of like being worked on now. We will, at the year end, we will get together and practice them out more and then put them on tape, and then we will send them off. So it's pretty, it's pretty straightforward at this point. There isn't a whole lot other than just doing the work to make it, get it to come together.
I can't really wait for that. So I can't really honest. I mean, like I was like, okay, I listen to Black Madonna, I listen to Behind the Calculation and the Bible songs. I can't really wait for that. So guys, please, we are waiting you
for listening.
No,
You're the one.
no pressure. Anyhow, thank you very much for your time. Oh, oopsie. All right, fair enough. Thank you very much for your time. Was lovely to meet you. Thank you for answering for the question. Is everything from me? What is going to happen though next? I'm concluding here the interview so we can talk a bit. After I'll tell them to edit and things like that. Okay. We will. I will send it over to my editor. My editor will be editing through the. To the guy actually is looking after videos and things like that. I will translate everything in Italian as well. Having a good audience of English speakers because we operate in UK as well.
Okay.
So that's why I wanted to do it in English and after translating it. And I will keep updated if you want to put it on ad websites and things
great.
like that.
Okay. That's great. It would have been a much shorter interview if you'd done it in Italian. So it's probably.
I know, right?
My joke.
Gotcha. Any remote? I mean, like, Tad, do you speak any Italian at all? All right.
No. I speak Spanish. We could have gotten someone to translate it in Spanish.
There's not that much of a connection in between.
I mean, if it was different, Spanish to Italian versus Spanish to say, like, I don't know, Cantonese, we would have been able anyway. You're right. So yes, thank you for doing it, and thank you for doing English. I hope it's well for you.
Slightly offensive though, but I accept it now. I mean, like,
what? Do you want to get into the etymology of the languages and have me a common Latin root behind? Oh my god! All right.
Yeah, the root is the same, but fair enough. Okay, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. You've been lovely, and thank you,
sir.
Yep. Anything else? Feel free to get back in touch. But this has been a blast. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Much, guys. It's been amazing. Thanks a lot. Have a nice evening. I mean, have a nice afternoon. I don't know what is that. All right. All right. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye now.